this couple, they were coming into Hotel California, exploring it, looking around, and they could see the Dogman standing on that first floor, you know.
And we found a footprint that was roughly about the size of mine. Where the toes were, they were these 5 lines that came out that looked like claws.
Yes, there's a cover-up going on.
You know, the park makes a whole lot of money every year. They make millions of dollars every year. Sightings of Dogman would severely cut down tourist dollars.
I was with my best friend Martin Groves, and we had went up there on the 30th anniversary of his encounter, which he was nearly killed by a dogman and apparently Bigfoot or whatever they were. But we had went up there, and nobody had ever been back in that camp, and he wanted me to go with him because we've been very close friends a long time, and I trust him like he does me. We had been riding that area. We'd been up there 2 days. We had been way back in the LBL, where if you've been to the LBL, there's just miles of roads that go back in there that go to nowhere. Gravel roads, dirt roads to the left, right, wherever you go back in that area. And we had been back there that night and rode around and seen quite a few animals, lots of deer, normal stuff. And we went on down to the area where his actual camp was. And we had actually heard tree knocks when we went up there, like Bigfoot was trying to communicate with us. And we decided to go back that night up in that area. We're barely driving down through there, maybe 3 or 4 miles an hour, real slow. I've got my window down on my side. Martin has his window down on his side. He and I are just conversating, talking as we're driving, real slow. And we go down this little stretch, and I look off to the right, and I look over, and I'm maybe from at the most 10 foot from this creature, and it's laying in a ditch. Turned out it was actually an old creek bed there next to a culvert, but it had a lot of sticks and grass around it. I couldn't see its feet, but I could see the rest of it, and this thing was so close to me. It was looking right in the window at me. It had a massive head, about half the size of our truck windshield. It was looking right at me. The eyes looked like 2 tiny flashlights. They were solid clear. It was laying down, but it was in like a stance like a cat would be when it was going to pounce on a mouse or something. And it was staring right at me, and he started slowing down, and I looked at him. I said, "Can you see what I'm seeing?" And he already had answered me before I got it out. And it was staring at me like it was going to jump in the window on top of me. But the strange thing about it was also transparent. I could see through it, but I could see the creature. And I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. And about that time, I looked over at Martin, and he's like gasping for air. And I said, "Are you okay?" And then I realized that I had been hit with something. My legs were tingly, my upper chest felt heavy, and I had a headache. But his symptoms were a lot worse than mine. He was slowing down, and I was worried about him. He goes, "No, I can't hardly breathe. It feels like my throat's swelled together and my tongue is swollen." And I said, "Do you want me to drive?" And he said, "No, let me get us to a safe area." And he's looking through the rearview mirror, and I'm looking out the side mirror, and this thing crosses the road. It goes through this field, the edge of it, and then it goes up the side of this kind of like an embankment, steep embankment. And you could hear it breaking limbs and snapping branches as it's going up at it out of sight. And I'm just like, what is that thing? And Martin was saying, "We need to get out of here, bub. We need to get in a safe area." And I said, "Well, can you breathe?" And he kept saying, "No, I can't breathe. I'm having a hard time." And we finally got off of that road and made our way down to a lighted area, and I was real worried about him. My legs were tingly, but I was functional a lot more than he was, and there was such a terrible stench inside the truck that he was saying that it stinks so bad I can't hardly stand the smell. And I'm saying, "Well, we need to get you to the hospital." He goes, "No, let me get out." He tried to get out, and I went around and opened the door for him, and he was really struggling to breathe, and I was real concerned about him. He was barely able to get out of the truck, and he was also sick feeling and had a headache, and I didn't really know what had happened, why this happened to the truck, why it smelled like that. And we both definitely got, as they call it, zapped or infrasound. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was like something it was almost like cartoonish, how strange this creature looked. But it was so real at the same time. This thing was like nothing I've ever seen. And I don't know that I ever will again.
The land between the lakes is a land full of mystery. Believed to be inhabited by creatures of legend, these claims are backed by the odd footprint or decayed remains. But could it also be that the lack of true tangible evidence points to the purposeful removal of said evidence by a third party? Surely not all witnesses to the strange and unusual are fanciful daydreamers. So where is the proof? Ever since the area's effective abandonment by the Tennessee Valley Authority and continued neglect by the Forest Service, the LBL has become a much wilder place. And remaining in place are the remnants of the promised attractions that were never completed, slowly assimilating into the environment over decades of inactivity. Still, every once in a while the Forest Service demolishes a former campground or attraction, seemingly at random. But when observed more closely, a disturbing pattern emerges.
This used to be a tourist attraction.
But like everything else in the LBL, they had these tourist attractions that were what they promised the area was going to be. It's things to bring people in, to have tourism dollars. It's going to revitalize the area. The region's going to have a source of income coming from it. And then it just went away. They just walked away from it, you know. The campground we took Alex into was once the busiest campground on the land between.
It was the jewel of the LBL.
The jewel of the LBL is what they called it. And you had to like literally reserve. We found old mentions of it on old newspaper articles talking about for summer activities that if you wanted to stay there, you had to book a year out ahead of time, just because it was just probably the busiest spot on the LBL. What's down there where Martin Grove's attack happened. And you always hear about the 82 attack and how they shut that campground down on the north end. They shut that campground in the south down temporarily in 1982. And then they just kept pushing back that temporary closure until finally it just never reopened at that point. And they expanded out the area that the roads are blocked off at that point. Went in with heavy equipment and wrecked it. And the one newspaper article that we found people questioning that's where they gave that official answer of, well, it's unsafe, the buildings are unsafe, we don't want anybody getting hurt, we don't want anybody back there. And I'm just going, all right, they've gone in, and that's literally where you can find cut down telephone poles. You find little remnants of signs and the leaves and all that, but everything else has just been wiped out. You do find some asphalt like this that nature's just kind of taken back over at that point. It's very apocalyptic walking down into there, so.
This is a whole parking lot right here.
Yeah.
It's just being taken back.
And as you can see, give it another 10 years or so, and the forest is just going to completely take it back over. We've had one girl reach out to us that was down here that she said stuff got thrown at her. And that's why I always talk about how stuff falls off the observation tower, because that's what they thought it was at first. Because they said they've been here before and stuff has fallen off the observation tower, and then they realized it was coming in from the side and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from.
Yeah, because a lot of people will come down here, a lot of like teens will come down here and
What are they doing down?
you know,
Teen stuff, man, teen stuff.
making out. But yeah, so we've read a couple of reports of weird stuff happening down here. People say it's haunted and stuff like that. But, you know, sometimes that's the first thing people go to when weird stuff starts to happen. If you have weird noises or stuff moves, it's, oh God, it's haunted. But, you know, you're in the woods, there's a possibility it could be something else.
Yeah, when they had the stuff tossed at them, they said that they saw large black, like, figures. Again, which is very similar to what we heard up the road. And I'm like, well, you know, what are you telling me, like, here, like shadow people? Like, what are we going to? Is that the supernatural thing? And she goes, no, they were like really big people in the woods throwing stuff at us. And I'm like, all right, well, what do you think it was? And she goes, I don't know if it was Bigfoot or not. We didn't hear anything. We didn't hear howls. We didn't hear the stuff that people usually associate with Bigfoot, but that there were large, like, black figures throwing stuff at us from the woods. Well, before we came down here and checked it out, I'm going, maybe it's like homeless people. There's no homeless people here, at least on this end. I mean, you know, homeless people need some sort of infrastructure to survive, you know. I mean, there's nothing here to really keep anybody alive if you don't have a vehicle to kind of go back and forth with, so. But as you can tell, like I said, look, there's literally pieces of wood just falling off this thing. If they're so concerned with, like, visitor safety and that's why they're bulldozing and closing the stuff down, this would be the first thing to go.
This would have already been taken down.
This would have been taken down a long time ago. So I just keep coming back to that. I know I'm just going, the official story of why they close these campgrounds down and why they wreck everything just doesn't make sense. And
when you see stuff like this.
This is Exhibit A right here, so. So she said they were around through here at the base of the tower when stuff was like hitting them. So they thought it was coming from above, and that's when they realized it was coming from this area over here. And they saw like large black shapes in the tree line throwing stuff at them. So they hightailed it back and went out. Thing you'll notice about it too is that there's not a lot of graffiti. She said people don't come here at night because they're just so spooked out by it. You went to Hotel California, right? Covered in graffiti. There's a little bit through here on the other side, or at least there was. You don't really see a lot of stuff here that you would expect an area like this to have. You know, I mean, again, there's towns like right over here. You would think that people would just kind of swarm this. There'd be graffiti everywhere. Everything would be carved up. She said people are like uncomfortable coming here at night just because of the feeling that you get here.
I mean, look, here's a bolt right here that fell down from up there, from the structure. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff falling off of this thing pretty regularly.
Strange occurrences are not relegated to former government-created locations, though. Plenty of old homes still exist in the LBL as a result of the TVA's use of eminent domain to remove the original populace in preparation for the creation of the lakes that now define the area. At present, these old homes are the haunts of local teens and creatures of the night.
Yeah, this is Hotel California, man. Not sure how it got its name, but it used to be just a guy's home. Like, there's pictures online of it in its heyday. Looked real nice.
He was a retired ship's captain and built a home for his wife. And then it succumbed to time over the years after land between the rivers was taken by eminent domain for the by the government.
Yeah. There's actually a picture like right after they flooded the area. It's like a helicopter picture, and you can see Hotel California off in the distance, like right after they flooded things. Explore it. It's cool, man.
I wonder which room was which.
Somebody was in here with a campfire.
Ow. Yeah, I've wondered that myself. I guess one of the smaller rooms.
Wherever you want. There's a encounter that was shared on Dogman Narratives. He's the original poster, to my knowledge. He shared that a couple was up here, I think during the nighttime hours or really early morning hours. And this couple, they were coming into Hotel California, exploring it, looking around, and they heard something shuffling around on the floor below them. And there's a set of stairs over here. I believe they came over to these stairs, and they looked down to the first floor, and they could see the Dogman standing on that first floor, you know, this big bipedal canine standing down there. And they were watching it, and it was standing there, and it was raising its nose up in the air, sniffing the air, almost like it may have been trying to smell them out. And I forget if they threw a rock and kind of distracted it. Either way, it eventually had run off, and as soon as it ran off, they booked it for the exit in that direction, out toward the road. I forget what prompted it to run off, but they did get out of here to tell the tale. And I remember another story, I think it was from up in this area along the trail over here, that some men had seen something strange up here one night, and when they're shining their flashlight at it, it would dart in and out of their flashlight beam. Some sort of Dogman or Bigfoot up here, but it would try to intentionally stay out of the flashlight beam. But I think it was along these trails over here that probably took place. Yeah, man, I think they were on these stairs when they're looking down, and they could see that Dogman, or that's at least how the video seemed to play it out.
Well, these are steep stairs. I'd hate to have to run down them from a Dogman, and this is definitely a head smacker here.
Oh, yeah, it is.
If you walk around long enough, you'll see so many different, remains of old farmsteads and structures and old cisterns that have been reclaimed by time.
You may have had multiple settlements where things would kind of stay away from, because there was a people presence. Now that the fact that those people are gone, maybe it gives them a chance to
roam a little more.
Run amok.
But the question also arises, maybe a food source is gone, because surely some of these people had to have pigs or cattle or chickens that something probably would have broken in and stolen. And now if those people and those farms are gone,
yeah,
I don't know that to be a fact, but I could assume that might be a factor.
In the past few decades, there seems to have been an uptick in reports of Dogman creatures all across the United States. This simple fact coincides with the decreased activity of the government in the LBL. But on the more skeptical side, this also coincides with the arrival of the internet. Certainly, the advent of the internet provided new ground to spread information and misinformation to undetermined amounts of people without being double-checked, giving rise to internet cryptids like the Chupacabra or Ozark Howler. Could Dogman be one such creature? Many will be quick to point out the sheer number of witnesses as evidence that not every report of a Dogman is illegitimate. If so, that begs the question, what does the government know about these creatures, if anything? And are they hiding the truth from the public?
The park makes a whole lot of money every year. They make millions of dollars every year, and sightings of Dogman would severely cut down tourist dollars, and even Sasquatch sightings would cut down a lot of tourist dollars. Now, people tend to be more calm toward Sasquatch these days because, you got bumper stickers all over the place with Bigfoot and whatnot. So I think that they would probably hide something being here as long as they could, but I think they would prefer to keep Dogman a secret. And there have been stories that have came out which seem to imply the park does cover up things that has happened here. I think this came from Tim Kumbo Baker. He shared a story of a woman who ran out of the woods and screamed to these people that she'd seen 2 monkey men killing her husband. Now, if that was something of a Sasquatch nature, I don't think the park ever reported on that. I don't think they shared anything like that.
Had a guy I spoke with on just, I don't know what you call it, on a thread on Facebook that had seen something, and he fixed up buses, one of those guys, but they had been out. He mentioned asking one of them one time, and the guys basically told him to shut up, forget about it, do you want to go to jail this weekend kind of thing. That, yeah, that's, don't quote me on that. That's a summary of a long line because he was interested. I think he's up in Ohio now, so that's how he'd been like, hey man, I heard your show, I heard that. I used to grow up down there, used to camp down there. What do you think about that? I don't approach him. You know, I'm that guy. I tell him, I coach soccer, coach high school soccer. I'm an athletic director at a high school. I've been in education for 20-something years. And I've got a kid that's a real good kid, but I've told him, I'm like, look, you're that guy. You know, and it's like speeding. 500 other people may go by and not get a ticket. You're gonna get the ticket. And I know because I'm that guy. And a bunch of other people could go talk to it, and it could be the friendliest Forest Service guy in the world. But if I talk to him, it's gonna be, hey, you don't have your seatbelt on. You know, so I stay away, not because I'm that's why I said what I do for a living. I have no criminal background, but I just let them move on to other things, personally. So I don't know. I don't know that it would ever occur to me. Because like, if you're asking, I think they do know. You would have to know. You have to know. You have to know. If you spent time out there at night, I mean, everybody's heard the screams. Everybody's heard the screams. You can, Wrangler's Camp, it's right down here, the horse camp. There's actually a Dogman story that came out of that. I mean, you don't have to dig too far and you'll hear somebody, hey, what were those weird screams? We stayed at camp because we heard the sounds. We left because we heard the screams. And again, that's why I said, I don't, there's not much for me there at night.
Yes, there's a cover-up going on, and the government's bad about covering a lot of stuff up. But yeah, there's something going on. I don't know if they want to try to keep them secret or they don't want the public to be terrified or whatever, in a panic. But yeah, I'd say that about like UFOs, they're covering them up.
Well, some will theorize that they'll get into a more conspiracy theory kind of thinking that JFK flooded this whole area to kind of trap the dogmen in this specific area of the park. I don't know if we have an official answer or not. All I can tell you is that they used eminent domain to drive everybody out to create the national recreation area that we know today. But if you think in terms of a conspiracy, that's what people tend to jump on, that JFK was trying to trap these things here, and he made Lake Barkley and Lake Kentucky and made the largest inland peninsula in America to trap these things here.
I've heard stories, there's a lot of stories about LBL and the government hiding things. I will tell you a story that's not really, it doesn't coincide with that or jive with that. It's actually the opposite. We were in there doing a little expedition, if you will, and we got pulled over by some law enforcement. They wanted to know what we were doing back there. And as soon as we told them we're Bigfoot researchers, they took pictures with us. We got the casts, we actually had casts in the truck. We took the casts out and we got pictures with these sheriff deputies, holding our casts. And they even told us stories about family members that have had sightings in LBL. So it kind of contradicts the cover-up part because they were just open to it. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe act like it's no big deal. Makes sense, right? Act like, oh, yeah, we get Bigfoot sightings here. Oh, let me see your cast. Let me take a picture with you. To me, it's better to cover up, just kind of jokingly admit it. Otherwise, if you act like you're hiding something, then you're hiding something. I don't know.
It is nearly impossible to read anything relating to Bigfoot or Dogman in the land between the lakes without encountering the story of the 1982 massacre. The legend exists without any proof and is substantiated solely by self-proclaimed witnesses to the event, dividing researchers. Some claim that without any evidence, aside from the anecdotal, the story is a clear hoax, while the absence of evidence pushes many in the direction that it is clear evidence of a cover-up. For researchers and internet sleuths alike, the massacre forms a nexus point from which all other strangeness flows. Whether the story is true or not, in the decades since that story emerged, it has slowly seeped into the minds of those who live there, forming an unspecified dread in those who linger in the LBL after dark.
So You know, when things happen to you in your life and then you look back and you realize you kind of revisit other things in your life. So I worked at a restaurant in Draftonville, Kentucky. It's over this way. I had a van, and I was the woodsman of the group, and we had an assistant manager where we always had parties out at her house, but we all thought maybe we'd go out to the lake. And I didn't set this place up. They were up at a place called Nickel Branch, and it seems like on the Barkley Lake side over here on the north end, there's a lot of stuff. I don't know where the site was for the massacre. I've never, and at that time, without Google and social media, we didn't know about it then, but I got to work one day, and I brought my van because it was full of wood. And they said, we've got to go get all the stuff. We're going to Bobby's house. And I'm like, why? And they said, you just need to go out there, please, and get the chairs and the tents and the stuff we'd already set up for this party. I took a guy with me, a friend of mine with me, he had been there during the day. They had gone and set up. So we drove out there, and he kept telling me he was calling it a wampus cat. Now, I don't know if he made that up. I don't know what a wampus cat is. And I was teasing him the whole time. Evidently, they had heard something screaming and growling and coming towards them. And then we heard it too. When we got there to pick it up, it was on the other side of the cove, and he's like, that's it. He called me Smitty. Smitty, that's it, let's go. I mean, and you could see the fear. I thought it was a mountain lion or something, you know, and they're here. I've seen them. They whether they're passing through or not, if you call the Fish and Wildlife, they'll give you the standard line. But it's pretty common to see, so I thought it's just a mountain lion or something, maybe had a deer down. We heard about the story about a year later because, you know, it's word of mouth. And I think it was my assistant manager at the time came back and said, did you guys know what they say happened over there? And that's the first time I had heard about it. So I don't know. I'm of the opinion, and again, from my dad, being in the line of work he was in, government's gonna do what they wanna do, and if they don't want you to know about it, you're not gonna know about it. And that doesn't shock me a bit. And it's a huge tourist place. The lakes used to be full of crappie and full of fish. That has gone down, and the tourism has come up, and they've been trying to get people there for the hiking and for the camping and for the biking. And I can definitely understand why they wouldn't want something like that out, you know. So
Whatever version of the story is true, the story had to originate from somewhere, so I would think it has to be real in some capacity. Because, I mean, legends come from somewhere.
Yeah. We actually met a guy, and he was like former police. He said that he remembered back in the day that there was like a local news story. There was a family up here that got attacked or killed by a Bigfoot. And that's what he said the news said. And, you know, you hear that something like that, and it's like, wow, that doesn't seem like what a news station would do. I did get a comment the other day that somebody had seen the local news story when the family was attacked back in the day, and they said the news said some sort of creature attacked them. So that's two comments that's kind of the same basic thing. So maybe that did happen.
Another distinct part of the lore that is heavily debated is the invisible border between Dogman and Bigfoot territories.
Yeah, so a lot of your Dogman sightings, for whatever reason, they'll take place up in the northern end of Land Between the Lakes on the Kentucky side, and a lot of your Bigfoot sightings will take place on the southern end toward the Tennessee side. Now, every now and then, I'm sure you've had crossover events, so to speak, but for whatever reason in our research, it seems to point that they stay up in the north, the Dogman, Bigfoot stay up there in the south, and I don't know if that'd be a territorial thing or not. I told Seth that years ago, my dad interviewed a woman who had Sasquatch and Dogman on her property, and she said that on this side of the woods, the Dogman stayed over there. On this side of the woods, the Bigfoot would stay over here. And it was sort of an unspoken rule that they didn't cross over into their other sides. They just stayed to their side of the woods. And her being in the middle, sometimes she would see both of them every now and then just come on her property for different things, different encounters. And you hear a lot of stories of them kind of just not being very agreeable one to another, like they getting a lot of fights. Supposedly people have seen Bigfoot and Dogman fighting before, not here in this park. I want to make that distinction. But I'm sure anything's possible. Maybe every now and again they work together in one way or another, or they just happen to be at the same place at the same time. But I'm not sure, man.
I will say this though, which is weird, that out of like, and these are not like the publicly, you know, bandied about stories that everybody always talks about, but the ones that we just get like privately, we get more reports from like the Land Between the Lakes with Sasquatch, with like parent-child type things, you know, an adult and juvenile. Everywhere else, it seems like in the South, it's always like singular sightings. At least from where we're at, it's always like roadside crossings. I was hiking and came upon one. I was hunting and I saw one. In the LBL, we get more adult with a juvenile stories than anywhere else under the sun, you know what I'm saying, by far. So it's something about the LBL, and I don't know whether other researchers really do that or not. Most of the people that we know that do the LBL are mostly focused on Dogman. But Sasquatch stuff, we just seem to get just such a high percentage of what appears to be like a mother with a child, which is weird because you would think if there was a breeding population here, the LBL's big, but it's not that big. You know, you'd be able to see evidence of it. But we constantly see things of just a large one and then a small one. Talking to other people that have had like Bigfoot sightings, they reported seeing small footprints down near like the water line and all that as well. And if you go around the LBL, there's a lot of washed up refuse, like, you know, sharp metal, glass, stuff like that. Nobody's letting their children, you know, human children walk around barefoot down there at the water's edge. But we seem to find a lot of that there. So I don't know what it is about this area where you seem to get reports of like young Sasquatch at a much higher like proportion than you see in the surrounding areas.
We're not very far from where the family was attacked, and we believe we found Sasquatch prints up there before. And Jody Cook, he talked to us once that there's supposedly a Bigfoot up here it's like a big alpha, and they nicknamed it Stonefoot because it doesn't care where it goes, it just does whatever it wants. And supposedly it'll traipse all over the northern end as well.
But the thing you always see in the South is that like Sasquatch, Dogman, it's around old homesteads, abandoned buildings, stuff like that. And this is like prime, like somewhere that your mind's already kind of primed for weird stuff to happen. And especially imagine being here at nighttime, how big this is and just how creepy looking it is. Your mind's just primed for it. So
It might feed off of that.
One theory presented by some is that Dogman might be a misidentified Sasquatch.
Some sightings, yes, but some of them I don't think it's possible because witnesses will specifically describe they have the hocks like a dog, specifically a canine looking foot. And I've seen pictures of footprints before of a canine footprint that measured like 7 by 11 inches. And there was even like some human-like front feet that they took pictures of as well. So some of them I don't think it's really possible, but other times people describe them, well, it looked like it had human-like legs. Maybe that's a misidentified Sasquatch, and it's more like kind of like that baboonish look that we discussed.
My feelings is Dogman is a government soldier project. That's my that's my take on it. You know, it's some kind of a hybrid, maybe. You know, it may be a hybrid, you know, mixed with maybe between a wolf and a Sasquatch. You know, but
I think it varies case by case. I think they are two separate creatures. You know, a Bigfoot and a Dogman. But you know, in some instances where maybe somebody doesn't see it well, they'll just see a big, hairy, scary creature, and they'll think, oh, it's a Bigfoot, or oh, it's a Dogman, just by what they've heard more stories of, but haven't necessarily seen the creature well enough to identify. So I think it happens sometimes, but not all the time.
Yeah, there's a place called Werewolf Springs, and Montgomery Bell State Park had a documentary they would show about that. And just for example, my dad at the time, he didn't know about Dogman, didn't believe anything like that. But he figured, well, that's probably a misidentified Sasquatch. So, you know, I'm sure it happens all the time. People see what they think is a bear, and maybe it's actually a Dogman. They just see the muzzle, it's like, oh, there's a bear. You know, I'm sure it happens quite a few times. And I don't know if I told you this or not. I may have. I've mentioned it today. But that years ago, we're having a tire changed. And when we're waiting in the office, somebody had been down here hunting an LBL, and they were talking to somebody at the desk. And they said, man, I seen something black and hairy standing up on 2 legs out there when I was hunting. And the guy was joking with him, was like, you think you seen a Bigfoot? No, it's probably a bear. So, you know, maybe something as easy as that. Oh, it was just a bear, but they actually did see something.
Another aspect to the ever-expanding mystery of the LBL is why Dogman is so prominently discussed here. Reports of Sasquatch, and to a lesser extent Dogman, abound all across the continental United States, and decades of accumulated Sasquatch research and evidence collection make for a more believable and interesting narrative, describing a creature undiscovered by science living in the woods of North America in plausible terms. However, despite this, and in light of shaky physical evidence and a plethora of anecdotes, the idea of Dogman has latched onto the LBL like nothing else has.
It's a sexier topic. We get a lot of UFO reports from this area. And I always call it, you know, it's not like the stereotypical 1950s, 1960s, the craft landed and the aliens got out and walked around. You get a lot of like UAP, balls of light type stories out of here.
A lot of unexplained lights.
People tell us all the time.
Light formations that come down to like ground level.
Yeah, that come out of the tree line here. People will be on the opposite shore, see lights come out of the LBL, usually in groups of 2, dance across the water, and then just retreat back into the forest. You just don't hear a lot about that with the LBL because everybody's focused on the Dogman aspect. So the other thing we always think about too is that how many of these like Dogman stories that come out of the LBL are misidentified Sasquatch. People do see Bigfoot here. It's just that I think a lot of times people are primed for
They've got Dogman on the brain.
Yeah, they've got Dogman on the brain. So if they do see something large and hairy in the woods, they come out going, I saw the beast of LBL. It may not have been canine at all, what you saw, you know, if this thing is canine, you know. But it seems like that Bigfoot just kind of gets overshadowed to a certain extent over Dogman just because of the I don't know if you want to say the cultural importance, but when you hear LBL, you immediately think beast of LBL.
Yeah.
You think Dogman. If you do hear Sasquatch, you hear it and how that relates to Dogman. You know, that trope we talked about, Dogman on the north, Bigfoot on the south, and they're at war, you know. But yet people that are out here taking a serious look, we found Bigfoot sign in the north. We have found Dogman sign, possible Dogman sign. We've heard weird howls that didn't sound like those stereotypical Bigfoot calls. We've heard those in the south end. Martin Grove's attack happened in the south end. The bow hunters that went missing that were supposedly tied to Dogman, that's in the south end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think that there's a really good possibility that there is a Bigfoot presence here. How large it is, I don't know. Obviously large enough for there to be children, you know, juveniles being like reported here. And that's the other thing that doesn't really match up with that supposed like conflict going on. If you were a species and you're at war with another large aggressive species, you wouldn't have your young running around unattended. You know, it seems like this would be the last place Sasquatch would have their juvenile at. But instead we get reports of it all the time through here. So it doesn't seem like it's that dangerous of a place for them. You also don't see any evidence of that. Has anybody ever come across a field of just dead Bigfoot and Dogman where they've had it out? And
had a great battle?
We've never even heard reports of them, of like people going, hey, I came across this forest clearing and there was a large like wolf creature and a Bigfoot like at war.
I think that whole feud is just an invention of the internet.
I just think it's one of those things where somebody heard about a Dogman sighting, somebody heard about a Bigfoot sighting in the same geographic area, and then somebody else just went, I bet they fight. And then it just kind of grew from that point then. So, and that's the thing about the Dogman topic. It's even worse than like the Bigfoot subject, that it's hard to kind of get through all the exterior made up stuff with it. Because it's a wild topic, werewolves. We got werewolves running around, you know, and you have to peel all that stuff back to kind of find out that, yeah, there are like really credible witnesses. There's not as much physical evidence that you see with Bigfoot. And I think that's because of the nature that Jesse talked about earlier, that they're just not here all the time. There's something more spiritual, demonic, otherworldly going on with that phenomenon than there maybe is going on with Sasquatch, and that lends itself to not leaving as much physical evidence. But we found a really weird footprint up around the bunker area and the 82 massacre site. We came up to check it out. There was a storm system moving to the south of us that we were in the clear on. She carries a little Garmin InReach Mini.
Yeah.
satellite communicator, and we started getting messages from home going, there's a tornado headed to where you guys are at. And
Yeah,
the
it
wind
was
starts
coming
picking
down.
up.
It was headed straight for us.
So we're going, all right, let's check the area out before we get off the peninsula. And we found a footprint that was roughly about the size of mine. And weird looking. It didn't look like it had a kind of a wider heel than what you would normally expect, although there might have been some heel slippage in the mud. But where the toes were, they were these 5 lines that came out that looked like claws. And we've had people tell us that like all those are like, you know, mountain climbing boots. And I'm going, wear mountain climbing boots in the LBL, you know, on like level ground. We didn't see what made it, but it was a weird print.
Very weird.
Really weird print.
Yep.
And we were going, well, you know, if it's something that has like the body of like a normal hominid, you know, bipedal primate with just like a wolf head on top, that maybe the foot has claws on it. I mean, because you hear about those types as well. You hear about the ones that just look like timber wolves standing up straight with like regular dog legs and dog paws, you know. And then you hear about the other ones that look almost like just movie werewolves with like people bodies and wolf heads at that point. So, but they do leave some physical evidence, just not as much, so.
Whatever evidence there may be for both of these creatures, nothing will be proven without good gear and research tactics. And just as there are a variety of opinions about the exact nature of what exists in the LBL, so too is there a variety of research methods and equipment.
Well, if I'm on a Dogman outing, I go to some places where there's been a history of sightings in that area, and one of the things I like to do is I carry a silent dog whistle with me, and we've had interesting reactions to that before. In the South, we've blown silent dog whistles, and I wasn't present for this, but she was. They were blowing silent dog whistles, and something would blow back from the woods, sound like it was blowing air through flat human teeth, and it was like trying to mimic the whistle, and they'd blow, and this thing would reply, and it went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And even into the next couple of days, they left and came back, and when they were getting out of the car, before they even started blowing the dog whistle, this thing was still out there, and it was going, sounded like it was trying to get them to bring the whistle back out, so to speak. In places with Dogman history, we've blown this before and been bluff charged by something large and terrifying. Sounded like it was sounded about the size of like a T-Rex running through the woods. It was terrifying. Other thing we tend to do is we'll take a megaphone and call blast sounds that have been attributed to Dogman before, and whatever it is in the audio, we've gotten replies from it before, so I don't know. I make sure to bring some good bright flashlights, because, you know, there's been multiple stories of these things. You'll shine a light at them and they kind of cover up their eyes like that. They don't seem to like bright lights, and, you know, that's a good defense. One, there's plenty of things to trip and fall over here, so you want a bright path to walk on, and 2, you want to see what's out here as well. I keep the dog whistle on, well, when I don't forget it at the house. I tend to forget my dog whistle at the house, but I try to keep it with me. I bring my megaphone so I can call blast, and a camcorder. That's generally what I bring along and actually keep on me at the moment. Now, if I'm doing a Sasquatch outing, I like to do occasionally a tree knock, and I used to make these tree knockers out of cedar and would bring them along, and have had replies from those back and forth. And in the case of Bigfoot, generally the best thing we've ever done in the case of Bigfoot is we'll just start a campfire, sit around it shooting the breeze, and things seem to get curious and they'll start kind of coming up close, and they'll occasionally, you'll hear them holler around you. One of the best whoops we ever got recorded was done just like that, just shooting the breeze around the fire, and it came up right in the middle of my dad talking.
So when you guys go out, what's kind of your approach?
We mix it up. We're very kinetic. We always tell people, I would love to be able to like set up camp somewhere and just kind of hang out and then just have like the activity come up to us. And I know that people have luck with that. We never really have.
No, we'll do stakeouts, like stationary stuff, where we have all the equipment out. We'll have the parabolic out. We'll have the thermal on a tripod. We'll have the full color night vision on a tripod. Just have all the kit and caboodle out because we have a ton of equipment. We use a lot of equipment to do this. But we don't carry it all every time we go out in the woods. We kind of pick and choose because we have to carry everything deep in the woods on our backs. We have to kind of pick and choose what we're going to carry out for each expedition. But when we do these stationary stakeouts where we have everything, it's like barely anything happens, you know? But when we start to move around and kind of interact with the environment, then we start to have activity happening.
We figure we're either making something curious, pissing something off, you know, just so we just move through the night a lot. We do a lot of like just night hikes, a lot of night walks. We'll mix it up. Sometimes we'll go extremely quiet, no visible light. Other times we just act like normal hikers, talking normal tones of voice, white light.
Just to mix it up and see kind of what works, what doesn't, what causes something to kind of get stirred up.
Yeah. And then even when we do set up stationary, generally if we hear or see anything, we pack up and move after it. So like I said, our big thing is really moving through the woods at night.
Being mobile, being able to kind of change your approach on a dime and just being able to vary that approach. And if you get new information or something else happens, you can kind of change plans immediately and move with it.
And if you look at all of our stuff, like when we have all of our equipment laid out, everything's like small, portable, lightweight. Like we've got a field microscope that we take out that's just extreme. It's made for like field biologists. It's made to use on the go at that point.
Because there was an area where I was finding these really long, strange hairs, and it's very remote, not even on a trail. I was finding these long hairs that were really thick, just hanging out of trees.
Almost looked like from a horse's mane.
Yeah.
But there's no way a horse could get back in there. And we were even going, all right, are birds carrying them here for like nesting material?
So we got the field microscope to kind of check those out anytime we came across them.
But I mean, and then we've got like the parabolic microphone set up that Jesse talked about, because we were hearing in a spot in North Georgia, we were hearing what almost sounded like, you know, Sierra sound faux speech type stuff, but it was very faint and like very high pitched. We couldn't pick it up on our cameras. So we built a parabolic setup for it. We use like a Zoom H4n Pro, and then we've got like a Wildtronics mini parabolic that's used for like bird watchers, try to hear bird song while they're doing bird watching.
It's super light, it's portable, but it's still too cumbersome to really take out in the field.
You got to set it up, it takes time. If you hear something and you want to move quick, you got to break it down. So it doesn't really get as much use as what we thought it was going to. But everything else, it's just about being like mobile and like really fluid and like quick to react if anything we see or hear anything weird. We get a lot of weird light phenomena up where we're at, like the little balls of light and the orbs and all that. And I know that every culture tells you don't follow the lights into the woods.
We have a bad habit of following them.
The lights into the woods. That's why we've got such a wide array of cameras. We use like regular stereotypical night vision camcorders. We couldn't pick the lights up. So it would just be footage of us going, do you see that? And then just nothing.
So we got a full color night vision. We were running on a Psionics Aurora Sport for a while. We actually captured the Brown Mountain Lights with that. Probably some of the best footage of the Brown Mountain Lights ever captured on that Psionics Aurora Sport. But recently we upgraded because we want to go back to Brown Mountain and see if we can get something a little better. So we upgraded to the Psionics Pro, which is leaps and bounds better. But it's still compact. It's something that's very compact. We can throw in the backpack and go out there, but we're constantly chasing the phenomenon with the tech and constantly trying to capture this phenomenon. We see it, and it's just, there's nothing more frustrating than watching someone out there doing investigations and they're like, did you hear that? Did you see that? And there's no evidence of it. So our whole goal here is to gather real evidence and real data.
It's weird because we trying to catch those balls of light. We eventually started using these full spectrum cameras like ghost hunters use that go, instead of like into the infrared range, they go from ultraviolet through visible light into the infrared. And we found that even though those are fairly short range cameras, they're basically just like GoPros, we have the best luck catching those little orbs with that, which makes me think that they're putting out light in the ultraviolet range, and that's why we couldn't necessarily pick them up with standard night vision equipment. But we end up repurposing a lot of stuff like that. Stuff that, you know, we break it a lot because it's not that durable, you know, and we're out in the woods and everything. So we go through equipment pretty quickly.
But there's not a lot of people doing what we do, so you have to adapt existing equipment to our purposes. And sometimes we have to kind of fit it out for our purposes too. Like I mentioned that full color night vision camera. We actually had to add on an additional IR because when you're in the woods and it's dark, and if you only have like a speck of moonlight, it's not gonna gather in as much light. It needs that extra light, that ambient light, to really get a good picture. So we added on an additional IR spot that just bolts on the bottom with a Picatinny rail that you can use for an AR, and just bolt it on there, and now it's like clear as a bell when you're just looking through.
We've hit the point now where we're starting to get stuff specially built I'm like big on the infrasound theory. You know, every time something weird happens with like Sasquatch, people trot out infrasound as like the possible answer for it. And to me, that didn't make sense because we kind of know what infrasound does, because animals, you know, elephants, you know, whales, hippos, you know, they all use infrasound. Infrasound occurs in nature, you know, avalanches give it off. The meteorite enters the atmosphere, it gives off infrasound. So we reached out to a small little 2-person scientific manufacturing company that make an infrasound monitoring device that they use for elephant research over in Africa. That's large, it's pretty cumbersome, so I got them to make me a smaller one that's like backpack portable, that doesn't have to be hooked up to a laptop, that has like a visual display on the front that tells you if it's detecting infrasound, and if so, how powerful it is. So we're using that right now to try to get infrasound readings out to see if we catch elevated levels of infrasound when there's other weird stuff going on. And it's weird because I got in touch with them because I'm like, I want to measure infrasound. The stuff you're using to record right now records in the human hearing range. There's no point to record under 20 hertz because you can't hear it. So I'm going, all right, all the commercially available recorders can't pick up under 20 hertz. So how can I pick it up? And I looked at some stuff that cost like 20,000 bucks. It was extremely like, you know, you had to basically build it, transport it in the back of a truck. And then I came across this company that builds them, and they make them for amateur astronomers. Because again, like if a meteorite comes in and explodes in the atmosphere, it gives off a burst of infrasound under 20 hertz. So these guys will have their telescopes in the backyard, just trained on the sky, and they'll have these infrasound monitors. So if they look and see that they got an infrasound spike at like 3:20 a.m., they know to go back and look at the footage from their telescope, and bam, they might see the actual meteorite just kind of like exploding in the atmosphere. But those are a little bit bigger, they're more fragile, they have to be hooked up to a laptop in order to run. And then you basically use software like you would for like a seismograph, because you're not really measuring volume because you can't hear it. You're measuring sound pressure levels, you know, changes in the atmosphere. So I'm like, hey, can you specially make me something? And he goes, we make most of them to order, so I can do some modifications. And I kind of talked to him about what we needed. And it's cool because we went back and forth for a few months. And then he was finally just like, by the way, what do you need this for? You know, and I'm like, use it for like Bigfoot research to see if Bigfoot are giving off infrasound. And the dude didn't even miss a beat. He was just like,
okay,
all right, that's pretty cool. And now if you go on his website, the original model, he has all the uses listed for it, you know, wildlife biologists, amateur astronomers, and at the very bottom, it's like paranormal and Bigfoot research. And I'm like, well, the dude saw, you know, a little market that
he could open up there.
You've got to test the heck out of it because so much stuff gives off infrasound.
Sure.
I had to go to a regional airport and hang out in the field next to there and just watch it as planes came in and out to kind of get an idea, because I don't want to be in the woods and have a plane go overhead.
And then you go, oh my God, it's infrasound.
And then we had to go check out, because helicopters give off a ton.
Really?
So then I had to go set and watch how helicopters would like make it set off. But my theory is that people get hit with infrasound all the time. You don't hear about zookeepers that work the elephant enclosure suffering the zapped effects that people talk about. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Air's a pretty crappy transmitter of like sound waves. Water's better. Whales are much bigger than you would expect a Sasquatch to be.
Sure.
People swim next to whales all the time when they give off infrasound. You don't see them bopping to the top of the water unconscious.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of misinformation going around about infrasound. We've theorized that we don't think that Sasquatch even gives off infrasound, but I think this was part of a process of maybe disproving that theory.
Yeah, that's what we're kind of doing.
So actually testing for it and disproving that theory.
I don't think infrasound's is the culprit for like that. I think that zapping effect happened. She's had weird stuff like that happen to her in the past.
Yeah.
We've talked to extremely credible people that have reported.
There are strange effects of something, but we want to kind of take the time and effort to eliminate the infrasound theory and kind of explore what it actually could be.
And it all started with just an argument on like a Bigfoot page online, like everything else does. People were just swearing to me, it's infrasound, that's what it does. And I'm going, I don't know the first thing about infrasound. Let me start to look into it, you know? And the more I learned about it, I'm going, this is not what, if it is infrasound, if it's infrasound, then there's something using infrasound in a way that doesn't exist anywhere else in nature. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the animal kingdom. If it's infrasound, it's something that's like just completely unique on our planet, the way that it uses it. And it'll be extremely apparent. It'll be a very sustained, extremely strong level of infrasound out there that's directed somehow. It all comes back down to people always go, tigers use it to hunt. And everybody latched onto that. Her name's Elizabeth Muggenthaler. She's done other stuff. Alex mentioned, he goes, oh, she's done other stuff, I guess, with like, you know, Bigfoot or cryptozoology. I just know her in relation to that. I didn't know what else she'd done. I know that she's done stuff with tigers using infrasound. They use it to basically warn rivals off from like their hunting grounds. Elephants use it to communicate. There's really no parallel to anybody using it as a weapon or as a defensive tactic.
More important than their research is a researcher's why. Why does somebody decide to search for something that has turned so many away from the topic in terror, or potentially even killed people? What could possess someone to defy all logic in pursuit of these creatures of darkness?
I look for Bigfoot because I have no healthy sense of fear, I guess. Now, it can get spooky out in the woods, you know. It can get a little nerve-wracking at times, especially if something starts charging out of the woods at you. In places near here, we've been run out of the woods. We went into a spot and something broke a tree and slammed it to the ground and made it quickly known that it didn't want us there. We've had rocks thrown at us before, but I don't know, it's so fun to get out and look for this stuff, even if it is frightening. I don't know, maybe it's an adrenaline junkie kind of thing.
So I started off, I was like a physical like Bigfoot guy. That's all I was into. I wasn't into ghosts, UFOs. Jesse was more like from the paranormal aspect. We live in the southern Appalachian region that has a lot of folklore, you know what I'm saying? And even the Sasquatch kind of like stories that come out of there, they're a lot weirder than what you get in like the Pacific Northwest, up in Canada. In the South, that part of the South, there's always like a tinge of the supernatural to it. So we kind of like join forces in what we do, you know, Bigfoot research with like a tinge of the paranormal. The idea of Dogman was just ridiculous to us. I mean, it's just a bridge too far. You know, werewolves, I mean, it's just not anything that we were really kind of prepared to believe. So we got a story sent to us by a guy who was just like, listen, this happened near where you all live at. I don't know what you want to do with it, but he and his family had a cabin at a place called Blowing Rock, North Carolina. And his daughter was a collegiate runner. So they had it during the holidays. She went out for a run on Christmas Day and something came out of the brush and started chasing her. And it was all on all fours to begin with, looked like a large wolf. She pours on the speed, looks over her shoulder just in time to see it kind of come up to 2 legs and continue to run after her. So she comes, you know, into the cabin, terrified. They go out and look, and he's just like, listen, normally I would just say this is just a bunch of bull crap, but it's my daughter. She was obviously terrified. She was very specific in what she saw. I don't know if you want to do anything with it, but here's the story. Just kind of keep it in mind. So, and for some reason, it was like the floodgates just opened up after that. We started getting reports stretching from Blowing Rock, North Carolina, going down to the southeast, just person after person. At one point, we thought that there was a coordinated effort to just kind of hoax us because we were getting so many and we'd never really gotten any before. Upright wolves, werewolves, this, that. We had a lady that claimed that one was trying to get into her house at night, that it had killed her dog, that it had smashed its arm through her living room window, tried to grab her uncle, that the family had opened fire on it, all of these crazy stories. So we start going out and meeting some of these witnesses, and some of them are extremely credible. I mean, extremely credible. So even then, we weren't really prepared to accept the idea that something like that would exist. It's just too crazy. But we started looking into the topic, and we became even kind of more amused by it, because when you look at it, there's so much like just internet lore BS that's the first thing that you kind of encounter when you look into it. The most like forward-facing aspects of the phenomenon are obviously just made up. They're LARPing, it's creepypasta, it's stuff like that. So we were like, hey, you know what, let's look into it. But even then, we're cracking jokes the entire time. We started calling it Dogman Summer. So we're gonna go around and we're gonna visit all of these hot spots for Dogman. And the first place we decided to look at was LBL. So we came here and we're cracking jokes the entire way down. We're laughing, we're having a good time. It's basically just cryptid sightseeing. And it was the night before Midsummer Night. We were out moving around the 82 massacre spot and we caught something on thermal that matches what people reporting seeing the beast of LBL look like. Wolf-like muzzle, big pony ears. It was watching us from a ravine. Snapped a couple photos of it. And when I looked at it, it didn't scream like wolf or canine to me because it's got these big, long, like oversized pointy ears. I told Jesse it was like I was looking at a big bat more than anything else with these ears like this. So we got in touch with some people that were predator hunters that used thermal a lot. And they were like, all right, it's not a coyote, it's not a wolf, it's not a bear, it's not a deer, it's not a feral hog. Then we got in touch with some of the people that have researched the LBL for a while. They start sending us witness sketches of what people have reported seeing. And the defining feature are these extremely exaggerated, oversized, pointy ears. When we showed Martin Groves the thermal image, he was just like, that's the outline of exactly what I saw. That's the outline of what attacked me. That was oversized. He goes, when I think about it, it's always those, how big and just exaggerated and pronounced those ears were. So we just went, I said, all right, I can't say that I saw the beast of LBL, but I saw on thermal imaging something giving off body heat that was like a little bigger than me. It was moving, it was alive, it was watching us from cover. It disappeared when it realized I could see it. And it matches what people were reporting seeing here. Didn't see it with my naked eye, it was gone by the time I got my flashlight up. But it's not just looking at a picture of a tree line and you pick out a face in the leaves, it's body heat. It's body heat. And I racked my brain going, is there somebody trying to hoax us? So after that, we started paying more attention to the stories. And it was a real pronounced thing for us. We spent a lot of time in the woods alone. It's just the two of us were out for days at a time. When we left the LBL, we went back to South Carolina, went to the gun shop, got higher caliber weapons. I mean, literally, we got into South Carolina, hit Palmetto State Armory.
Got another chopper coming.
Bought 10mm pistols. So it had a huge change on us.
Mystery clings to the LBL. Like the morning mist clings to the lake's surface in the early morning, shrouding the land's true form and distorting the perception of all those who look at it. It seems that without government disclosure, or some kind of grand discovery by any of the researchers profiled in this series, no definitive truth will be revealed from the LBL. Scary stories, coupled with a distrust and resentment toward a larger governmental body, carry enormous weight, essentially making them true in the hearts and minds of those who believe. In fact, many of the stories that come from the LBL bear the hallmarks of modern myth-making, as the unpopular and authoritarian actions of the TVA morph into an oppressive and terrifying presence in the form of an upright canine. However, to say it is all myth is unfair to those who have had brushes with these creatures, whatever they are. In the end, more research and more study of the LBL will have to be done. And in the meantime, the stories will live on, forever coloring the land in its hypnotic shade of terror.
Back in '82, it's an early spring, late winter. A family of 4 brought their RV in here, husband, wife, son, and daughter. And apparently, shortly after they arrived, while they were setting up to go camping, they were attacked by the beast of LBL.
Well, it's a supernatural hotspot up here. Well, one thing in particular, you find a lot of tents ripped open and missing over here.
And it's just like Kentucky, a dark and bloody ground at this point. The bitterness has soaked into the land.
Just ride along and I look out the window and this creature was in a stance like it was gonna pounce, like a cat would run.
I was totally incapacitated by these creatures at one point, and it was feeding off of my fear. And I felt like the more fear that it was getting from me, it was like it was gaining more power.
I'm scanning with this new thermal imager, and I pick up like an extremely strong heat signature.